If you ever owned one of these consoles, chances are this video will bring up some painful memories. We apologize in advance.
Its own voice. Its own legs.
Before we begin, we publish new content all week long, so be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. It's time to take a look at consoles, including handhelds and unreleased systems, that were financial failures, even if they had some good games available and never really caught on commercially, so they didn't stick around for too long. How many were sold? How much did they cost upon release? How did we ever fall for their marketing campaigns? Oh, sorry, just needed to vent.
Sega Genesis is 16 bits, 3DO is 32 bits, the Atari Jaguar is 64 bits, which is more advanced.
Sega Dreamcast.
A massive project, with scale the world has never seen, has finally been unveiled.
Okay, before you start yelling at your screen, we know that the Dreamcast absolutely rocked. Shenmue, the Sonic Adventure games, Crazy Taxi, Soul Calibur, there's tons of games and good times to be had on this system. It's just that coming off of its previous failure, the Sega Saturn, the Dreamcast was do or die for Sega. And by the time the PS2 came around, well, the Sega Dreamcast just couldn't compete. It was less powerful, had no DVD support, and its third-party lineup was dwarfed by what Sony had. Thus, it only sold 9 million units overall, and caused Sega to take heavy losses, seeing as sales came nowhere near matching their expectations. The console was discontinued in 2001, only being on the market for a brief 3 years, and it would unfortunately be Sega's last console to date. But we'd sure love to see the company take one more swing at it.
Hey, I'll play with you some other time.
Nokia N-Gage. The N-Gage is another case of, if only this other system didn't exist, as it was ultimately outsold by the Game Boy Advance by a ratio of 100 to 1. Yes, 100 to 1. In fact, sales were so bad with 1.5 million units over 2 years that retailers started offering $100 discounts just to get the hardware moving off their shelves, and it's easy to see why. The system has a myriad of design flaws, from its phone speakers being on the rim instead of the face, to the fact that you had to take the phone apart just to change the game cartridge. Not to mention that the phone keypad just wasn't comfortable to play games with. It was a hybrid that doesn't do either thing right, and that is a recipe for disaster. Nintendo Virtual Boy. Before the Wii U caused legions of Nintendo fans to doubt the once almighty Japanese gaming company, there was the Virtual Boy back in the mid-90s. And oh boy, was this thing ever a mess. If you've ever seen pictures of Virtual Boy games, you know that the red and black display was truly awful. And if you've ever seen the device itself, you'll wonder just what Nintendo was thinking in releasing such an awkward design. It doesn't help that the product was forced to the market unfinished so the company could refocus all of its efforts on the N64 either. Add to this the fact that the damn thing cost over $200 back in 1995, which would get you a PS4 today, and it's a wonder how it even sold the paltry 770,000 units it did, making it Nintendo's second lowest selling device after the N64DD.
3D game for a 3D world. Wanna play?
Apple Bandai Pippin.
Apple is betting that the TV will be the preferred viewing device with a new approach to home computing called Pippin.
For this entry, we'll have to try and remember a time when everything Apple touched wasn't an instant, overwhelming success. That time was the 90s. The now famed tech company teamed up with Japanese toy marketer Bandai, who also didn't have much experience in video games, and shipped an incredibly slow home console that was basically just an old Mac wrapped up in a sleek white box. Not only did it have to compete with the PS1 while costing twice as much, but it also failed to have even one slightly memorable game at launch. Kind of hard to market something so slow, bland, and expensive, isn't it? Sales of the Pippin were so bad that the console was pulled from US markets and eventually discontinued just a year after launch, with final sales figures hitting the 42,000 mark. This is one gadget Apple would love us to forget. Panasonic 3DO Interactive Multiplayer.
Presenting 3DO, the most advanced home gaming system in the universe. It's time to put away your toys.
You could say the 3DO was ahead of its time by putting games on CDs when cartridges were still the norm. But then again, it's probably the thing that also sunk the console as well, because the price to produce the hardware meant it sold at a whopping $700. What kid could convince their parents to shell out that kind of cash for a video game system? Also, there were not many companies developing games on CDs at the time, so there was very little content for the console overall. The 3DO only lasted for 3 years and sold 2 million units, and at one point the 3DO company was taking a loss of $100 for every console sold. We're no economists, but even we know that's not sustainable.
Heavy alien activity reported at Giza and Cairo. Set recon scanner for auto record.
Atari Jaguar and Jaguar CD.
Then, Cybermorph only on Jaguar by Atari. Get bit by Jaguar.
Atari's last kick at the can on home consoles obviously wasn't the success they had dreamed up prior to its release in 1993. Despite being reasonably priced at $250, the system only managed to sell roughly 250,000 units. So what went wrong? Well, first, it was marketed as the first 64-bit console when, really, it was a 32-bit system with a beefed-up graphics card. Second, technical problems with the hardware's system architecture scared away nearly all of its third-party developers. And lastly, it had way too many add-ons and peripherals for such an underwhelming system. Case in point, the Jaguar CD, which was released for some unknown reason 2 years later when the console was clearly not a success. Why anyone would release a CD add-on after Sega's crashed and burned is beyond us. RDI Video Systems Halcyon.
Well, it's hard to communicate to the people that have never seen the product.
Just because it was never released doesn't mean the Halcyon wasn't a total failure. In fact, it's probably more so for never having reached the marketplace. The system was planned to ship in 1985 and was constructed using RCA's Capacitance Electronic Disc Player, or CED for short, but after RCA ceased production of the CED player, the Halcyon switched to Laserdisc, and we all know how successful Laserdiscs became. Basically, the cost of production once using Laserdisc was too pricey, and plans to take the unit from prototype to full production never came to be. The remaining prototypes were handed out to investors, but even they'd only have 2 games to play on the machine, as out of a planned 6 games, only 2 were finished. Thayer's Quest and NFL Football LA Raiders vs San Diego Chargers. Wow.
Courtesy of the ultimate in video entertainment, this voice-activated Laserdisc computer.
Do you want to play?
Yes.
Philips CDI.
But then you hear about the next generation CD player.
It's called CDI, and it works with your TV to bring you the ultimate in movies, games, and family entertainment.
Awesome!
It really all comes down to the CDI as the mother of all financial failures in the video game world, with Philips estimated to have taken a loss as high as $1 billion. Yes, we said billion. That's mega bucks, but the system never really knew just what it was. Interactive multimedia thingy or video game system. Well, looking back, it's not even clear to us, so it must have been extremely confusing to consumers back in 1991. Also, with an initial price tag of $1,000, It's hard to imagine anyone but rich tech types dropping that amount of coin on a console that was barely able to play video games. Even getting the green light to use massively successful Nintendo characters in Link, Zelda, Mario, and Luigi wasn't enough to help Philips break even. So this console was almost assuredly doomed for failure.
Great!
Check out these other great clips from MojoPlays and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.